Welcome to the podcast. This is a space where we tap into our truth, our essence, where we go to the depths within to seek our wounding and find a way to transmute it. These conversations will not only set ourselves up for amazing changes within our lives, but will also allow us to hold space for those around us. I believe that through these conversations, we will start to heal the feminine and tap into our divine essence. And then we will be able to hold space for the divine masculine, calling them up to a greater version of themselves. Let's dive in. Hello, beautiful humans. Good morning. I come to you. I was about to do some stories on Instagram about what I wanted to talk about. And then it was like multiple. Like we were kind of in the almost, I was recording, it was almost like 5 or 6 minutes. And I was like, I still have way more to say about this. Like this has to be a podcast. I considered going live on Instagram, but I am still in my bathrobe with, like truly in my bathrobe. So I was just like, I don't know. So here we are. I come to you this morning, cacao in hand, bathrobe on, wrapped in blankets, so nurtured, so full, and ready to have this conversation with you. Today's conversation is all about how we can really honor ourselves and how in doing that, we actually honor the other person that we are in relationship with. So for the first 30 some odd years of my life, if I had to put a number on it, probably like 35, 36, maybe even 37. So I'm 39 right now. Up to a couple of years ago, there was still, and even now I notice things come up. There's still these like deep-seated people-pleasing tendencies. Actually, I think the thing that I resonate the most with is wanting to be a good girl, really being seen as a good girl, or not being seen as somebody who is bad or mean or inconsiderate. These are the stories that have kept me from, within myself, that have kept me from speaking my truth, really honoring me, and just like this fear of perception of others. And I think there's a lot of different reasons why all of us tend to people please or want to put other people's needs ahead of us, whether that's societal conditioning, familial conditioning, cultural conditioning. There's so much that we are inundated with that doesn't really have us anchoring in our truth or anchoring in our body or knowing what our own needs are, that this comes up a lot. And for whatever reason, this particular conversation has been coming up a lot in the last week. And so it felt extra pertinent to just sort of like share it here, share it now, and let the energy be held today, but also in the future. It's still very relevant. So when I talk about like people pleasing and, shifting that dynamic in order to honor both people in the relationship, specifically what I'm talking about is when we do things that we know is a no for us, we do them anyways, and then like it's stopping that cycle. So for example, let's say I'll use me. In the past, I would have answered the phone when my mom called, no matter what. Like, no matter what. And she knows this. This is not a secret if she listens to this podcast. Nothing's happening here. We're good. In the past, I would have picked up the phone from my mom no matter what. And even on times when it felt like a no for me, and then on times when it felt like a no for me, I would have guilt and shame around, well, why don't I want to talk to my mom? She's my mother. I should want to talk to her. Like, what's the problem? Right? I would start blaming myself or shaming myself in and around why it was a no for me. But sometimes it's just a no. Sometimes it doesn't feel like the right time. Sometimes I'm distracted by a million things. Sometimes I don't have the energy to pour into somebody else. And quite honestly, at this juncture in my life, now it doesn't matter to me why it's a no. If it is a no in my body, then I do not pick up the phone. And I have let my mom know this. I have said like I'm going to answer the phone when I have the attention to give to you because our relationship matters to me. So I want to make sure that I am present, I am there, and I can hold space for us both. And that is true. But what the flip side of that, what I used to do was I would answer the phone anyways. And then in almost like inevitably, not every time, but most times it would be like, oh, I didn't, I couldn't hold that, or this is going on, or like that feels like too much, or this was overwhelming, or I shouldn't have answered the phone, right? Sometimes it would create this distension in my body, especially when I knew answering the phone was a no for me. This has also been true for me when I have said yes to things I've been invited to when I knew they were a no. And here's what I want to offer up as a little shift in perspective. We often think that doing these things for other people benefits the relationship. And in my opinion, it doesn't. It actually does the opposite. It detracts from the relationship, right? If you think of doing things or things that feel really good as like deposits into the relationship, and you think of things that feel really good as withdrawals from the relationship, when you don't honor yourself and you push through or you do something because you think it's going to benefit somebody else, or somebody else wants you there, or somebody else wants you to do something, or you might be seen as a bad person, it actually doesn't benefit that relationship. It's actually a relationship withdrawal because you are not satisfied in that relationship. So your energy can't fully be there. You're not able to give what it is that the other person actually desires from you. Because if you ask the other person what they really want from you, they want all of you. Like they want the full capacity of you to be able to show up. And that's just not available all the time. That's not realistic. So when we do things that are against our own energy, a couple of things happen. One, we detract and withdraw from the relationship with ourselves because we are not self-honoring. We are saying like, oh, forget your needs. I have to tend to this other person. Then when you interact with that other person, often the exchange is a relationship withdrawal, right? It creates more distension or overwhelm or lack of honoring or maybe more resentment or feelings like I do everything for you and you don't do anything for me, right? We recreate these stories and how we feel by not honoring ourselves. So the shift that I want to give to you is like when we honor what it is that we need energetically, we not only honor ourselves, we honor the other person and we honor the relationship. So I always see in any relationship dynamic 3 components. I see me, I see them, and I see this third person, almost like this third entity or being that is the relationship. How the relationship can grow, how it can develop, and what will look like over time. It's this third piece to the puzzle. It's the us in the relationship. And in order for the us to benefit, we need to consider ourselves, right? It's me, then you, then us. And if we're not paying attention to the me and what I need, and we're only benefiting the you might feel a little bit better in the short term, but the us is suffering. The me and the us in that equation is suffering. And so that dynamic cannot hold up over time. People pleasing only works if you are prepared to people please for the rest of your life. And most of us hit a point where we are not. And so my reframe today is just like permission. It really is like a permission slip, not that you need it, but in case that you do, a permission slip to say like, it is okay for me to not answer the phone today. Because saying honoring my energy and saying no actually benefits our relationship. And here's what I mean. How many times have you, we've kind of already talked about this, but how many times have you answered the phone with a close friend or a loved one when you knew it was a no for you, and then got off the phone and felt like, ugh, like actually felt worse about that person, the interaction, and your relationship? Is that really benefiting the other person? No. Is that benefiting your relationship? No. And I think, I think the other person, if they really knew the impact of those dynamics, whether they feel like they need you in the moment or not, if they knew that having that interaction would mean that you would actually feel differently about them, like you would actually feel like, ugh, that was like less desirable, or it would change your relationship in a way that you would want to spend less time with them or engage with them less, I think having all the information, they wouldn't choose that. Some people do need things in the moment, and that's their own attachments, that's their own ability to handle disappointment or not getting what they want. That's not really our responsibility. But when we really look at the relationship and the honoring of the relationship and the consideration of all three parts, the me, the you, the us, then we are able to make decisions that really honor that interaction or honor that relationship. When I had this conversation with my mom, she was like, that makes a lot of sense. I notice even still, she'll say, if I call her and she doesn't pick up, she'll say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was just doing blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, Mom, you don't need to apologize. You don't even need to tell me what you were doing. I assume you didn't answer the phone because it wasn't a good time. Period. End of discussion. End of story. So as we do this work ourselves, as we start to have these conversations, or not even have these conversations, just energetically, it starts to shift the relationship. It starts to shift the dynamic. And it starts to shift, even more importantly, or what I found to be even more fruitful or nurturing for me, is it shifts the relationship with ourselves. Because the other part that I noticed through these types of dynamics is I was self-abandoning. I was reinforcing stories that I had about not being enough, not being worthy, not being loved, that my needs didn't matter, all because I wasn't able to say no. And this is something that took a while for me to heal, because there was many stories, a lot of like emotion and tension and overwhelm wrapped up in this one piece. And so I know when I talk about these things that it's not just this quick fix, like say no, oh, there you go, you're done. I'm well aware. The only reason I feel like I am ready and like excited to have these conversations is because I've walked myself through the path of unraveling these dynamics within myself. And really working on this, looking at this, and just noticing what comes up within us can be, that level of awareness can be such a huge step into changing these dynamics in our relationship. So I want you to consider this for a moment. How might it look if you did choose yourself? Just envision it for a quick second. Somebody's calling you, that generally calls you, that is in this sort of like, they want your attention. Maybe it's a little bit of like a needy energy. They need you. You feel like they need you. You feel like you would be a bad person or a bad friend or a bad daughter or a bad whatever partner if you didn't answer the phone right in that moment. Now, just imagine for a moment that not answering the phone is actually sending them a huge hug. You're not saying, I don't love you. I don't need you. I don't care about you. You're saying, I love you so much that I want to make sure that every time we have a conversation, I can be present for you. I love you so much that it's really important to me that we are intentional about making deposits into our relationship. and as few withdrawals as we can. It's really important to me that when I show up, I can show up as the best of me. And sometimes that means honoring my energy and not always picking up the phone. But when I have the space, I will get back to you. I believe that is what we are saying. That is what we are doing when we honor ourselves. When we say no to picking up the phone call, when we say no to the event that we know we don't want to go to, when we are honoring our energy, we are honoring the entire relationship. Now, here's the other piece. So, I mentioned that one of the things that I had to work on was all the stories around holding space and saying no. The other thing I had to work on was holding space for the disappointment when things didn't go my way. When I was the one whose call didn't get answered when she felt like she needed it to. When I was the one who was having an event and people said no, could I hold that? And there was a time where I couldn't. I made it mean something about me. But over time, I really worked on my emotions around it. I worked on the stories I had created around those instances. I had worked on my emotional intelligence. I worked on my ability to hold disappointment. And over time, yes, I could handle the no. And right now, to be in friendship or relationship with me, it's like you can just say no to me. And I might have a curiosity and occasionally I'll ask, like, oh, what else are you doing? Like, tell me, like, if I'm genuinely curious, but that is extremely rare. Most of the time, it's like, oh, okay, it's a no. Because I know from myself when I give my no, it's in the purest and most beautiful, honoring, heart centered place. And so I trust that what I'm receiving from somebody else, if it's a no, for whatever reason, it's a no. It is the best possible outcome for us both when I honor that. Because even imagine that I want to do something, I invite my friend says no. Let's imagine for a second that no is even about me, that they don't want to spend time with me. What is it really going to do for the relationship to force that interaction? Is it going to make that person like me more? Is it going to change the dynamic of whatever they're already feeling? No. It's likely going to go in the opposite direction. And what this really is about, if I'm feeling overwhelmed about it in the morning, in the moment, or I'm having a hard time with it, it's really about my own self-worth. It's really about my own sense of belonging. It's really about my need to be validated by other people that is creating the discomfort in my body. And then that's my work. That's an opportunity for something for me to heal. It is our responsibility to work on ourselves, to take responsibility for how we are feeling in relationship, to take responsibility for what comes up within us. It is our job to realize when we are the ones that are feeling needy or feeling like we need external validation or feeling like, we're coming from a place of not just desiring the interaction, but really feeling like we wouldn't be okay unless someone shows up for us in a particular way. Those moments are always an invitation for us to come back home, for us to look within, for us to take responsibility, for us to heal something. Those reactions, those emotions, that's just your energy in motion. It's your body trying to get you to see what still needs to be healed. And so these are our parts, right? Our things to look at, our things to work through, our things to honor within ourselves. And when we do that, we hold more space and capacity and find our ability and our strength to say no to honor ourselves, to honor our energy, to really tap into what it is that we need and ask for that. And we create space in our relationship and for the people around us to do the same. I have seen the ripple effect of this like already. I'm sure this is going to continue as I continue to do work on myself, but I have seen this change the dynamic of every single relationship for the better in the long run. That doesn't mean that it wasn't a little bit bumpy. That doesn't mean it wasn't hard for me to hold. That doesn't mean that there wasn't a million stories that came up in my mind in between. There were. But that is my work to do. That is my job to untangle the web that I have weaved over my lifetime. And when we sit back, acknowledge our part, do our work, and really honor the essence of who we are, when we truly honor our heart, we actually honor the entire relationship. And we remind the other person that we're in relationship with that they are worth honoring too. This can be the most beautiful gift we give to ourselves and to the people around us. And I'm not going to be, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. This is going to take some deep work to untangle these things from within. But I am here for you to hold space, to have these conversations. And so let me know if there's anything else that's coming up for you, how you feel about these interactions, and maybe even where you find it a little bit crunchy. Like, where do you get stuck? Where does it feel a little bit like, oh, this is hard for me. This piece, okay, I get it, I understand, but like this is hard for me to hold in real time. I'd love to have these conversations with you. Please feel free to add it to the comments. If you don't want it to be public, also feel free to find me on Instagram at Exponential Alchemy and send me a DM. I'd love to hear from you. Talk to you soon. Thank you for listening. It is my absolute honor, pleasure to hold these conversations, to have a space for these transmissions to come through. It is my belief that through these conversations, we start to heal ourselves and send ripples out into the world. I know you are ready for this. I know the world is ready for this. If you are already thinking of someone else who needs to hear this podcast, I would be absolutely honored for you to share it. And if we're not already friends on Instagram, please come find me at Exponential Alchemy. I will see you soon.